Ladies and gentlemen, if loving him has ever made you feel smaller, quieter, or more confused than confident, this message is for you. There are 5 things women do every day thinking it will keep a man, when in reality it slowly pushes him away and drains their power. This isn't about playing games or changing who you are. It's about the habits that silently cost you respect, attraction, and peace. Stay with me, because the moment you stop doing these 5 things is the moment everything in your relationships begins to change. There are moments in life when growth doesn't come from learning what to do, but from having the courage to stop doing the things that quietly drain your power. So much of attraction, respect, and emotional safety isn't about tricks or tactics. It's about the standards you refuse to abandon. When a woman begins to truly value herself, she doesn't need to demand better treatment. Her behavior already makes it clear what is and isn't allowed. The first thing a woman should never do with a man is abandon her sense of self just to keep his attention. The moment you start reshaping your personality, minimizing your dreams, or dimming your voice because you're afraid he might leave, you've already left yourself. Attraction doesn't grow from self-erasure. It grows from presence. A man doesn't fall in love with someone who is endlessly available, endlessly agreeable, and endlessly flexible. He connects with a woman who knows who she is when he's not in the room. Your independence isn't a threat to love. It's the very thing that makes love possible. When you choose your life, your passions, your friendships, and your values without apology, you're not pushing a man away, you're showing him the full, grounded person he's being invited into. The second thing a woman should never do is overgive in the hope that it will be returned. Love is not a currency where the most sacrifice wins the prize. When you give more time, more effort, more emotional labor than is being offered back, it doesn't inspire someone to rise. It teaches them to relax. Overgiving often comes from a beautiful place, but it quietly creates imbalance. Real connection grows when both people feel they are choosing each other, not when one person is constantly rescuing, fixing, or proving their worth. You are not here to audition for love. You are here to participate in it. When you allow space for a man to show up, to invest, to miss you, you're not playing games. You're allowing mutual desire to exist. The third thing a woman should never do with a man is ignore her intuition to preserve the fantasy. Intuition is not fear. It's pattern recognition. It's the quiet voice that notices inconsistencies, unmet needs, and subtle disrespect long before logic catches up. When something feels off, it usually is. Too many women talk themselves out of their own wisdom because the potential feels so good. They say, maybe he'll change. Maybe I'm overthinking. Maybe I'm asking for too much. But the truth is, the longer you silence your intuition, the louder the lesson becomes. Trusting yourself doesn't make you difficult. It makes you emotionally intelligent. A woman who listens to her inner voice saves herself years of confusion and heartache, not because she's guarded, but because she's honest with herself. The fourth thing a woman should never do is chase clarity from someone who thrives in ambiguity. If a man wants to be with you, you won't be confused. Curiosity is natural, but chronic uncertainty is not romance, it's avoidance. When you find yourself analyzing texts, replaying conversations, and trying to decode mixed signals, the message is already clear. Interest that has to be hunted down is interest that isn't fully there. You don't need to convince someone to choose you. The right dynamic feels steady, not anxious. It feels calm, not consuming. When you step back, instead of chasing, you give yourself the dignity of seeing the truth rather than negotiating with hope. The fifth thing a woman should never do with a man is tolerate disrespect in the name of patience. Patience is a virtue, but it's not a substitute for boundaries. There's a difference between allowing someone time to grow and allowing them to repeatedly cross lines. The way someone speaks to you, listens to you, and treats your feelings is not a small detail, it's the relationship. When you excuse poor behavior too easily, you normalize it. When you address it calmly and firmly, you teach others how to treat you. Respect doesn't arrive after you've endured enough. It shows up when you decide you are no longer available for less. Here's the deeper truth behind all of this. These aren't rules to control a man. They are principles to protect you. The most magnetic quality a woman can have isn't mystery, beauty, or perfection. It's self-respect. When a woman values herself, she moves differently, she speaks differently, she chooses differently, and the men who are capable of meeting her rise to that level, while the ones who aren't quietly fall away. Love is not about proving your worth, it's about recognizing it so fully that you no longer accept connections that ask you to shrink. When you stop doing the things that cost you your peace, your energy, and your identity, you create space for something healthier to enter. Not because you're trying harder, because you're finally honoring the woman you are becoming, the woman who knows that real love feels like safety, reciprocity, and ease, the woman who understands that the strongest position you can ever take in a relationship is standing firmly in who you are without needing permission to exist as you are, without waiting for validation to move forward, without bargaining with your own needs, and without forgetting that the relationship you have with yourself is the foundation upon which every other connection is built, shaping the choices you make, the standards you keep, and the kind of love you allow into your life as you continue to grow into someone who no longer asks for less than she deserves and no longer explains why she needs more, but simply lives in a way that makes it clear what is welcome and what is not, as she moves forward with clarity, confidence, and an unshakable sense of self that quietly speaks louder than any words ever could. From that place of grounded self-respect, everything begins to shift in subtle but powerful ways. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop hoping someone will see your value and start acting as someone who already knows it. And when that happens, your energy changes. You're no longer trying to be chosen, you're choosing. You're no longer waiting for reassurance, you're watching behavior. You're no longer afraid of losing someone who hasn't fully shown up because you've learned that losing yourself is the only real loss that ever mattered. When a woman understands this, she no longer confuses intensity with intimacy. She no longer mistakes attention for effort or words for consistency. She recognizes that real connection feels grounded, not chaotic. It doesn't require her to constantly perform, impress, or prove. It allows her to exhale. It allows her to be human. And that's when she becomes most attractive, not because she's trying to be irresistible, but because she's finally at peace with herself. This is also where emotional strength becomes visible. Emotional strength doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care without abandoning your boundaries. It means you can be warm without being porous, open without being unprotected. Too often, women believe that love requires sacrifice of self, but the truth is, healthy love requires self-preservation. When you are anchored in your own worth, you don't fear honesty, you don't fear asking for what you need, and you don't fear walking away when what you need is consistently ignored. There is a quiet confidence that develops when you stop negotiating with behavior that doesn't align with your values. You stop explaining why respect matters. You stop justifying your expectations. You understand that the right person won't see your standards as pressure, but as clarity. They won't feel threatened by your independence or offended by your boundaries. They will feel invited to meet you where you already stand. And here's something important to remember. Not every man who fails to show up is a bad man, but that doesn't make him the right man for you. Compatibility isn't about potential, it's about alignment. It's about timing, emotional availability, and shared values. When you accept this, you stop personalizing rejection. You stop internalizing distance as a reflection of your worth. Sometimes it's simply a mismatch, and recognizing that early is not a failure. It's wisdom. As you grow into this version of yourself, you'll notice that your tolerance for confusion diminishes. You no longer linger in situations that leave you feeling anxious or uncertain. You don't chase reassurance because you trust your ability to walk away from what doesn't feel right. That trust in yourself becomes your safety net. It's what allows you to love deeply without losing balance. You also begin to understand that your time is sacred. You stop giving endless chances to people who show you the same behavior in different forms. You learn that forgiveness doesn't require access, and empathy doesn't require self-betrayal. You can understand someone's wounds without volunteering to be hurt by them. That distinction is powerful. It frees you from guilt while keeping your heart intact. When you stop doing the things that weaken your position in a relationship, you naturally start doing things that strengthen it. You listen more closely to how you feel around someone. You pay attention to whether you feel calm or constantly on edge, seen or invisible, supported or alone. Your emotions become information, not obstacles to ignore. And that awareness guides your choices more accurately than any advice ever could. There is also a shift in how you communicate. You no longer hint. You don't test. You don't wait for someone to guess your needs. You speak clearly, kindly, and directly, not because you're demanding, but because you respect yourself enough to be honest. And if your honesty is met with defensiveness, dismissal, or indifference, you don't argue your case. You observe. You take notes. You let people show you who they are. This level of self-assurance doesn't make you cold. It makes you selective. It allows you to give your warmth to someone who can actually receive it. And when you do choose to invest, you do so from abundance, not fear. You give because you want to, not because you're afraid of losing them. That kind of energy changes the entire dynamic. It creates space for mutual desire, mutual effort, and mutual respect. Over time, you realize that the goal was never to be perfect or unshakable. The goal was to be aligned with your values, aligned with your needs, aligned with the kind of love that feels steady instead of draining. And once you experience that alignment, you can't unsee the difference. You can't go back to chasing uncertainty or tolerating half effort. Your nervous system won't allow it because it has learned what peace feels like. You also start to recognize that walking away doesn't always mean leaving physically. Sometimes it means emotionally disengaging from expectations that were never met. Sometimes it means releasing the version of someone you hoped they would become. Letting go of that fantasy can be painful, but it's also liberating. It clears space for reality, and reality is where genuine connection lives. As you continue to embody these principles, your relationships become reflections rather than battles. They mirror the way you treat yourself. When you prioritize your own well-being, you naturally attract people who are capable of honoring it, and those who can't simply fade from your life, not because you pushed them away, but because you stopped, pulling them closer at your own expense. This is the quiet power of knowing what not to do. It simplifies everything. It removes the need for over-analysis and over-functioning. It brings you back to yourself. And from that place, love becomes less about effort and more about alignment, less about proving and more about choosing, less about fear and more about trust in your ability to handle whatever comes next, knowing that no matter who enters or exits your life, you remain rooted in your worth, steady in your standards, and clear in your understanding that the most important relationship you will ever have is the one that teaches you to honor yourself even when it's uncomfortable, even when it means standing alone for a while, even when it requires courage to say no to what almost fits so you can stay available for what truly does. Continuing to move forward with discernment, self-trust, and an unwavering commitment to never shrinking yourself again for the sake of connection, but instead allowing connection to meet you at the level you have already risen to,